The upheaval that we're experiencing in healthcare is real. It's tangible. But we can improve better outcomes right now. There are several things that we need to do. First, we need to look at this problem and figure out how we're going to approach it together. We need to have full engagement of everyone within the system. We need the leadership to be engaged. We need the physicians to be engaged, the staff at the board level. We need everybody to make a commitment to improving this process right now. There is no such thing as an easy solution to this. Many people are looking for that quick fix, that one-shot inoculation to solve this problem, and it simply cannot be done that way. Let me give you an example. Hand washing is the perfect place where we should have 100% compliance. There should be no issue. We have known for hundreds of years that if you wash your hands, you reduce the infection rate, and yet we find regularly instances where people are not taking the time to wash their hands, follow a sterile technique, and as a result, there's an infection that leads to a catastrophically bad outcome. It can't happen, and it shouldn't happen. The board has an absolutely critical role in all of this. A board member today is in a very different position than they ever were in the past. This is not an issue of simply reviewing the financials and you've fulfilled your fiduciary responsibility. This is a level of engagement that is unprecedented, and each board member needs to understand it is their singular responsibility to ensure the outcomes for patients in this hospital. To do so, that means that they have to be aware, ask questions, be engaged in the solutions, and figure out exactly how to make the things that we're talking about sustainable. What we're really talking about here is a raising of the standards. We're not talking about a single focus on quality, on patient safety, on risk management. This is a comprehensive solution that we're needing for a very complex problem, but it's very achievable. There are other organizations that are considered highly reliable, that have employed a methodology very similar to what we're talking about with very, very good results. Let me give you an example. For instance, within the nuclear power industry, it's a very volatile fuel that they are working with in a potentially very dangerous environment. They have made the processes so reliable that the chances of having a nuclear meltdown are just exponentially lower than one it would expect because they've employed these techniques. The same exact thing applies within the aviation world. Aviation is inherently a dangerous undertaking, and yet because of processes, procedures, standardization, crew coordination, we've come to a level of expectation of aviation that there just won't be one of these catastrophically bad adverse events. You know, I've heard people say that this approach is very similar to what would be called cookbook medicine, and that unquestionably has some derogatory connotations. The thing that I want you to understand is I believe that standardizing the approach when it comes to medicine is liberating rather than restricting. I think that what it allows you to do is take all of those years of training, education, and bring them together in a way that you've reduced the number of variables so that you can focus on the task at hand. And that is absolutely imperative when it comes to delivering care, particularly to our sickest patients. There have been a number of times when I've been asked what the pillars of success are. And I believe that there are three really critical things that we need to involve. One is we need to have a buy-in from the entire organization that there is a need. And admitting that is a key part of the process. The second thing is we need to come up with a solution that is very straightforward. It's not something that is going to be viewed as the flavor of the month, the newest, most unusual thing. This is something that needs to be meaningful. And when I say meaningful, it's something that we can do without a tremendous amount of external effort, taking what we already know, refining it, and just simply making it more predictable. The third pillar, I believe, is commitment. I don't think this is something that's going to happen overnight. I don't think that this is something that may even happen in the near term. This is something that we need to say this is important enough that we need to have our organizational resolve be firmly behind this to the point where we commit people and processes and, frankly, money to making sure that this actually occurs. Many times we talk about this as cultural change or even depict it as a cultural revolution. This is not something that's going to happen immediately, although there can be some very good outcomes. Cultural change does not happen overnight. It's a difficult process. It requires a lot of organizational commitment. But I believe there are things that can be attained short term that are very tangible, They can make significant improvements in the quality of care immediately, but the culture will take a long time to change, and it will take an even longer time to sustain that change. You know, it's interesting that we talk about patient safety, because I believe that patient safety is something that has progressed significantly. I don't think we've gotten the results that we want, because I think that things fall down in the execution phase. I think we have commitment to this. I think we've placed this as a national imperative. The challenge is we haven't developed a good strategy. What we've done is we've gone directly to the tactical solution. We've given people things that they must do now, today, but we've never explained why, and we've never had it as part of a larger, more cohesive plan. When I come into an organization, I want several key things. First and foremost, I need all levels of commitment from within the organization. People at the C-suite level, people at the operational, the clinical level, and most importantly, it's people that are spanning the entire spectrum of the employees within that hospital. The reason is because if they don't all commit to it, make it their plan instead of somebody else's plan, then it will go away. Like any other skill, it will atrophy over time if we don't find a way to sustain it. If we don't find a way to make sure that we put things in place that keep it viable as the enthusiasm starts to die down and the reality of day-to-day life hits. There's been a tremendous amount of effort in this regard. People have put together teams. They've worked diligently. They've put resources and people and everything, and yet they've not failed. If they've achieved something initially, it's gone away at some point. I believe that has happened because there is an element of change that is very difficult to capture, and that is the change in organizational culture. What we're really talking about here is a quantum shift in the organizational culture, a shift towards a much more predictable, a much more reliable, a much more consistent mode of delivering care. But I'll be honest, I believe that one of the things that has occurred is that we have approached this as individuals. We have not brought together the collective consciousness of the organization and said, this is how we are going to approach this as an organization. No one individual can do this. This means that every level, every person, every employee of the facility, of the hospital, of the surgery center, regardless of where you work, has to have the same level of commitment to do this. The reason they have to have this level of commitment is because it's what's in the best interest of the patient. This isn't an issue of what we like. This isn't an issue of what we want. This is an issue of what we absolutely must do to provide better care for our patients. There are a lot of misperceptions out there of what exactly somebody needs to do to keep their hospital as safe as possible and have good outcomes. I'll tell you, one of the most common ones that I see is that if we're visible with this, if we have a lot of a press about it, that it will be something that is sustainable. And I just don't believe that that's possible. I think that what you have to do is commit on an organizational level to making this cultural shift towards patient safety. And what I mean by that is involving all groups, all stakeholders at the grassroots level, saying, we need to make these changes, we need to make them now, and it's what's in the best interest of the patient. I speak to many, many physician groups, and many times I hear I don't have time for this, or I don't want to be involved in this, I'm too busy. I'm going to tell every physician out there that I think it is imperative for them to be involved. You are literally determining your destiny. If you're not involved in this right now, you are risking having somebody in a bureaucratic organization dictate how you practice medicine for the rest of your life. Everybody says, I simply don't have time to do this. I'm telling you right now, you don't have time not to do it. If you don't take part in this, if you're not actively involved in this, if you're not committed to this on a personal level, somebody is going to tell you how to practice medicine that doesn't know medicine as well as you do. It is imperative that you get involved, that you figure out how to support the administration and the staff in putting these things in place today. And once you put them in place, keep them. Figure out how to hardwire them into your organization so that we don't have this conversation later. We need to make improvements in patient safety, quality. We need to reduce risk now. This situation is many times characterized as too big, too complex, something that we just can't handle. We just can't tackle it all at once. And I completely disagree. I think that there are lots of organizations that have tackled similar problems. If you look at the chemical production, years ago there was a catastrophic incident that occurred in Bhopal, India, that resulted in sweeping changes to chemical production, and it is much safer than it ever was. If you look at the way that infectious disease researchers approach the way that they handle highly contagious diseases, they're very, very good at not releasing those into the environment. You look at commercial aviation, an inherently dangerous endeavor in its own regard, and yet your chances of being in an airplane accident are so infinitesimally small you just can't even capture them. Those are examples of places where people have said we are going to make this commitment to change. And I want to give you one final example. Can you imagine somebody responsible for maintaining the safety of a nuclear weapon to say, I don't need standards, I don't need special standardized operating procedures, I don't need guidance, I don't need checklists to do some of these things, and risk not following through with all of the elements that they need to do to keep those nuclear weapons safe? Anybody that would look at this problem would say it's not worth the risk. It's simply not acceptable risk, and we're not going to do it. Many times somebody will say, so what's in it for me? And I'll tell you honestly, it's a difficult one for me to answer that, because I believe that the advantages for everyone are huge. If you're the administrator of a hospital, it makes your hospital better. It means that the outcomes that you get, the way that your staff interacts, the way that your physicians remain engaged is better in all aspects of the equation. If you're a physician, a lot of times physicians will say, I don't have time for this. This sounds different. This sounds like cookbook medicine. This means that you are delivering better outcomes for your patients. It means that your patients have higher levels of satisfaction for the great work that you do. And most importantly, it means that the things that you've trained all of your life for you're going to be able to continue to do those. This is a matter of putting your career at risk if you don't accept some of these things as realities, because they are coming. And if you don't believe that they're coming, I believe that you are seriously mistaken. If you're a staff member, you're probably thinking, this sounds like another thing that I have to do, and I'm already so busy I don't even know what to do. I believe that it's just the opposite of that. I believe that this will make things easier. I believe it will free up time for you to spend more time at the bedside and less time doing things that are not leading directly to better patient outcomes. So what's in it for you? It's time. And time is something that you don't have much of right now. A lot of times people will say to me, but so how do you engage the physicians? The thing that I think is absolutely imperative is to engage them on a gut level. What would you do if it was your loved one on the table? What would you do if it was your loved one that you were writing the prescription for? What would you do if the image that you were looking at was that of your son or daughter versus a patient? And then say, if you would do it differently, we need to make a change. Without physician participation, everything that we've talked about is going to be exceptionally difficult, if not impossible.